Greetings, booktubers. Welcome back to Grammaticus Books, where today we're going to be talking about The Fall of Babel, the fourth book in the tetralogy by Josiah Bancroft in his Books of Babel series, which has just been stupendous up to this point. The first three books, Semlin Ascends, Arm of the Sphinx, and The Hod King, were all outstanding, excellent. I rated them a 9 and a 10 and a 9, respectively, and they were just fantastic. They were the best fantasy that I have read since The Chronicles of Amber by Roger Zelazny, which is one of my favorite fantasy series of all time. It's much different in vein and tone than The Chronicles of Amber, but it's every bit as entertaining, and in many respects, it's better written than The Chronicles of Amber. So was Roger Zelazny able to maintain that standard here in Book 4, The Fall of Babel? Was he able to hit the grand slam with a final home run here in his final book, which was printed in 2021, not a century ago. We haven't gone back in time. This isn't a Robert A. Heinlein novel. But in 2021, was he able to hit this one out of the park and complete the grand slam? And I won't bury the lead. I'll get straight to it. The answer to that question is, sadly, no. He's not. Unfortunately, right at the finish line, Josiah Bancroft stumbles a bit with this book, and this book does fall off a bit from the standard that he set in Arm of the Sphinx and in Semlin Ascends and The Hod King. And I'll go into why a little bit. But first of all, if you're not familiar with the Books of Babel, the Books of Babel are about this immense tower in the center of this alternate Earth world that is set in a steampunk technology era where it draws visitors and tourists from all across the world into its depths. And once you go into the Tower of Babel, you never come out. And I'll read you the little bit of the blurb that describes these books off of the Amazon webpage for Semlin Ascends, and it gives you a good flavor of what these novels are about. The Tower of Babel is the greatest marvel of the Silk Age. Immense as a mountain, the ancient tower holds unnumbered ringdoms, warring and peaceful, staggered one on another like layers of a cake. It is a world of geniuses and tyrants, of airships and steam engines, of unusual animals and mysterious machines. And that's a great description, sort of a very quick overview of the tone of what you get here. And I've done three other videos on this, on the first three books. I will link them down in the description below. If you haven't seen the videos of those, the reviews, highly encourage you to go check them out. And I'll make a playlist out of all four of these, and I'll link it down below as well so you can get them all grouped together. But it's a fantastic book. In general, just a very basic overview. Semlin, who is our hero, arrives at the Tower of Babel with his beautiful wife, and he goes into it and loses his wife immediately upon arriving at the tower. And then he is forced to climb through the layers of the tower while he attempts to rescue his wife. He builds this crew of characters about him. He builds his character. His character ascends as he ascends through the tower as well, where he goes from this mild-mannered school teacher into a man of action. But he's not an Edgar Rice Burroughs or a Conan the Barbarian type of hero. He's definitely not somebody who's going to win most fights that he's in. But he has to build his character and his backbone and his willpower in order to gain back his wife. And it's just a fantastic character arc that he has. And the character arcs of all the other surrounding and supporting casts are equally interesting. And the world is just fantastic. The world building in here is just par excellence. I'd put it up there with Frank Herbert. I mean, maybe not quite on the level of Dune, but it's close. It is highly entertaining, and it's an excellent, excellent series. So at the conclusion here in Book 4, you have the Hod King, Marat, from the last book, The Hod King, who has unleashed his tower-destroying steampunk engine of destruction upon the tower to try to rip it down. And you have Semlin, who is inside of this engine, trapped inside of it, trying to stop him. And you have the Sphinx, the counterpoint, the protagonist versus the Hod King in this final epic duel within the tower. And also you have the final reveal, the final mystery of the tower revealed. What is the tower? What is its final mystery? And Josiah Bancroft brings that to a conclusion as well as wrapping up all the other plot threads that he's sprinkled and woven in between all these three previous novels. And he does a very good job with it. The mystery of the tower is very satisfying. I liked what he did with it. It was a very melancholy and beautiful way to end the book. So what went wrong? Why am I giving this one, where the other three got a 9, a 10, and a 9 respectively? Why am I rating this one at a 7? And a 7 might be generous. And the reason is is because that beautiful, beautiful prose that was woven all through the previous three novels, that was just fantastic, with the fantastic dialogue, the fantastic character building, and the wonderful writing, it stumbles here in the final book, The Fall of Babel. It breaks down and it actually gets clumsy in spots. And it was very, very unusual. It was almost as if the book was written by a different writer and it wasn't written by Josiah Bancroft. And even though the final mystery of the tower was very satisfying, it wasn't handled correctly. It was a good idea, but it was executed poorly. It was executed abruptly, and it was just came across as flat and didn't have the oomph and the power and the spice that the rest of the book had. And so it was a disappointing end, even though the concept was good. And on top of that, much of this book is focused upon Adam, who is the brother of Valletta. And Adam is, in my opinion, the least interesting of the cast of characters that were assembled about Senlin during this series. And so that was a bit of an uninteresting plot point to follow, and it takes up quite a bit of this book. And because of those things, the book just sort of, it loses its momentum, and it doesn't have that charm, and it doesn't have the impetus that just made the other three novels absolute page turners, and it stumbles at the finish line. So why did Josiah Bancroft stumble here right at the end, right as he's closing in, right when he was about to hit this grand slam? Why did this novel fail? Why did fail might be a strong word, but why did it stumble? And I have a personal theory on it. I don't have any information to back this up. I have no inside information. This is just my own personal belief. But the book was written in the year 2020. In other words, it was written in the middle of COVID. And my personal theory is that I think COVID had a severe negative impact upon Josiah Bancroft. And I think that negative impact from COVID, and nobody was feeling their best during that pandemic. I mean, that was a very unusual time, to say the least. People were losing loved ones. Everything was in flux. We really didn't know, where this thing was going during 2020. And I think that may have mentally affected him. And then that mental depression perhaps then worked its way into the book, and then the book stumbled a bit. It's the only thing that I can think of to explain why the writing, which was just absolutely beautiful in the previous three books, starts to break down and in parts actually becomes clumsy in here. So unfortunately, the series finishes on a little bit of a low note, but I'm going to say this: the previous three books of this series here, of this tetralogy in the Books of Babel, are so wonderful, they're so good, that I still highly recommend it. Even though the final book is a little bit of a letdown, the other three are so excellent that it holds up this tetralogy, and I still like it as one of the best fantasy tetralogies or fantasy series that I've read since the Chronicles of Amber. And with that, that's going to wrap it up for the Books of Babel, and I'm going to say take care, be safe, and I'll catch you guys next time.